The Diocese of Wilmington, Delaware. The story of the faith begins here with the old Bohemian mission. It came of age in the years after Vatican II through the guidance of visionary bishops and is still being written today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Francis Malooly.
I think the cross is just part of the package. And I think, key message is that God loved us so much. He sent his son to suffer, die, and rise to bring us back home.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the Cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. At the confluence of the Christina River and the Delaware River, about 33 miles southwest of Philadelphia, is the city of Wilmington, sea city of the Diocese of Wilmington, a community of faith that comprises the entire state of Delaware and the Maryland Eastern Shore.
The city of Wilmington began as the first Swedish settlement in America. Fort Christina was named in honor of Queen Christina of Sweden.
She was a convert to Catholicism, and she's one of 3 women who's buried in St. Peter's Basilica. The Swedes who come to this area honor her by naming a fort and a river after her. It's a testament to who she was as a ruler.
Catholicism in the state of Delaware developed between 2 early centers of Catholicism in the English colonies, Maryland and Pennsylvania. And so the region in which the diocese is located saw the influence of missionary priests coming from Philadelphia and up from Maryland in order to minister to the Catholic population that was there. The Diocese of Wilmington also includes areas on the eastern shore of Maryland, which includes some of the earliest Catholic foundations in the English colonies.
We began at Old Bohemia, St. Francis Xavier, in 1704. You couldn't worship then because the crown in England wouldn't. Catholics had to find outskirts. In fact, John Carroll, the first bishop, served in those areas.
The Bohemia plantation was a clandestine Catholic operation. Even though Maryland was founded as a Catholic colony, Protestants soon outnumbered the Catholic settlers and enacted laws that outlawed the open practice of Catholicism. So the Jesuits at Bohemia Plantation had to conduct their affairs in secret. Masses were conducted not in a formal church, but in a house chapel. The Jesuits supported their work by operating an actual plantation. They were listed as gentlemen farmers who grew tobacco and other cash crops, the revenue from which supported their missionary activities. But as part of that too, they themselves did not provide the labor for their plantation. Their wealth was generated through the labor of enslaved persons. And that legacy is part of the challenge that the Diocese of Wilmington and the Catholic Church in the United States has only recently come to terms with.
The first Catholic mission in the new state of Delaware is established by Father Patrick Kenny on the Coffee Run mission site. The Coffee Run Cemetery is the burial ground of the First Catholic Church, and located at the cemetery is a small cinder block building. It contains an altar, and it stands at the site of the original log mission church, built around 1790.
Father Kenny was an immigrant from Ireland, and he was later educated in Paris. When he comes to Wilmington, he travels about saying masses to the different people that he encounters, the different pockets of Catholics, administering the sacraments. He's a very strong advocate of teaching catechism to the young children and visiting the sick and those who were dying.
Father Kenny came from Ireland, got off the boat, checked out the humidity and the heat, got back on the boat, but they wouldn't let him back on. So he was here some 40 years in ministry. French Revolution, Haiti was a colony. Many people came here, and so when the church was established, it was basically a Haitian community, and the church was built. So there was a lot of history that was here on this side of the Chesapeake long before we became a diocese 150 years ago. But the city itself developed slowly, and we were attached to Philadelphia. Delaware was attached to Philadelphia, the 9 Maryland counties attached to Baltimore. And in 1868, when we became a diocese, they decided that we would be a suffragan to Baltimore. So even though we're so close to Philadelphia, we were connected, to Baltimore.
Thomas Albert Andrew Becker is named the first bishop of the diocese, who was born in Philadelphia. He was born to German Protestant parents, but he converts to Catholicism as a young man. He does complete his college studies at the University of Virginia, and then moves on to his seminary studies, where he goes to Rome. He was assigned to the faculty at Mount St. Mary's College in Emmitsburg, Maryland, until he was named Bishop of Wilmington in 1868. He was only 36 years old at the time, so he'd accomplished a great deal before being named bishop. He's bishop for 18 years, and while he's bishop, the number of priests in the diocese will triple, and then he doubles the number of churches. He established academies and orphanages and schools. He also wrote a series of articles about the idea of the Catholic University. So Becker is one of the bishops that's very instrumental in moving forward this idea that Catholics in the United States need a university. This eventually comes to fruition in the Catholic University of America.
In 1925, Edmund John Fitzmaurice of Philadelphia is chosen as Wilmington's 4th bishop. During his 35-year episcopate, the Catholic population grows from 34,000 to somewhere around 85,000. All but one of the 17 new parishes and 8 missions that he founded were built outside the city of Wilmington.
He's 35 years in this role. The Catholic population is doubling in the diocese. One of the interesting things that happens under Fitzmaurice is, while most of the parish schools were racially integrated, he orders that all schools become integrated in 1953. And what's so important about this is a year before the Supreme Court actually issues their judgment in the wake of Brown versus the Board of Education. So he sees this need and the importance of this even before our civil authorities do.
One of the fascinating elements in the history of the Wilmington Diocese is that we see this redemptive quality as the leaders of the diocese come to a much deeper understanding of the need for racial integration and justice. So while yes, there were great mistakes made in the past, we also see under Bishop Fitzmaurice this emphasis on civil rights, this emphasis on racial justice, which becomes a priority for the diocese.
There's so much history here, of all different ethnic backgrounds. We have one parish in Bear, Delaware, that has Indian, Native American, Hispanic, Nigerian, Liberian, African American, Catholics, and they meld together. But it gives some hope. So I feel good about our outreach here.
Upon Bishop Fitzmaurice's retirement in 1960, Michael William Heil of Baltimore becomes Wilmington's 5th bishop. His tenure is dominated by the Second Vatican Council, all of the sessions of which he attends. Bishop Heil begins the implementation of the council's early reforms. He sought the formation of parish councils in every parish. He establishes the Dialogue newspaper, and he's at the forefront of the ecumenical movement.
The Diocese of Wilmington is a forerunner in school integration. It also becomes one of the first dioceses in the United States to mandate parish councils. One of the first dioceses in the country that sees the need for a stronger lay involvement in the parish communities.
Throughout its long and rich history, the spiritual home for Wilmington's bishops, priests, religious, and lay people has been St. Peter's. St. Peter's was built by Father Kenny in 1818 as a simple brick and tin roof structure. Between 1870 and 1905, as the diocese grew significantly in population, St. Peter's went through a period of extensive enlargement and remodeling. The sanctuary and sacristy grew in size, and beautiful frescoes, stained glass windows, and marble altars were installed. A cathedra and a barrel-domed roof were also added.
When I come here, I just look around and see some significant history here. I think being the first parish in the city itself, and then being named a cathedral right after the diocese was founded, I think this is such an important site for the Catholic Church. It's very important to me.
The Cathedral of St. Peter in Wilmington, Delaware features beautiful stained glass, and these stained glass windows tell the story of the Bible along the walls of the nave through the windows. This series of stained glass biblical scenes begins with the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise.
There's a window with Adam and Eve, and then Mary and Jesus are kind of superimposed. Sin destroys us, Jesus will save us.
Besides these biblical scenes in stained glass, the cathedral also features a beautiful round skylight that depicts the seraphim. The seraphim that are pictured in this stained glass skylight have 6 wings, as is mentioned in the book of Isaiah, and the wings are meant to cover their faces, likely in an act of humility. This highest rank of the angels is constantly gazing upon the face of God, constantly within God's presence, and they're humbling themselves before the divine majesty.
Well, when I sit on the cathedra, the first thing I see, of course, is Adam and Eve and Mary in that window. There's a window back here of Jesus and Mary taking care of Joseph in his final days, and my eyes go there too. It doesn't take long to get me engaged once I come in here.
The cathedra, or chair, in St. Peter's represents Bishop Malooly's authority as the Apostle of Wilmington.
I grew up in North Baltimore County in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. Attended the local grade school, St. Ursula's Parish. Mom and Dad were very strong Catholics, but not very ostentatious. The parishioners knew them, but they weren't big man and big woman up church. My dad was a chemist and metallurgist. Actually did a lot of chemical and metallurgy work during World War II. He couldn't enlist because they couldn't afford to let people like that go. He died early in 1965. He was 47. My mom came from a strong Catholic family, Rosemary Murphy. Her older brother was actually an auxiliary bishop in Baltimore, Bishop T. Austin Murphy from 1962. He died in 1991. And together they were wonderful parents. I'm the oldest of 4, and it was just a wonderful time growing up in their family. We were a couple blocks from the church and the school, which made it very convenient. I liked all the sports and activities there, and that was very plentiful. We had a good number of parks for baseball, football, basketball, so it worked out very nicely. Went off to the seminary for high school at the then St. Charles College Seminary in Catonsville, Maryland, on the west side. Went to St. Mary's Packer Street for philosophy. And then I went to St. Mary's Roland Park. I was ordained a priest in 70. It was very meaningful because my uncle was the ordaining bishop. and it was in my home parish, St. Ursula's. He also ordained me a deacon the year before. He was the homilist in addition to ordaining me. A transition and a change that, of course, all of us in the seminary looked forward to. It wasn't any like lightning bolts. It was simply a good spiritual transition into what I had been preparing for 12 years. First worked in a suburban parish, 3,000 families. But I loved parish work. My second assignment was in the city. Heavily Catholic neighborhood, heavily Italian, German, and Polish. And I love parish work. The one thing I've always wanted to be was a pastor of a parish. The one thing I've never done. I went from there to run a youth retreat house because I'd done so much work with youth. So I spent 3 years in North Baltimore at the Sparks Retreat House. It's called now the Monsignor O'Dwyer Retreat House. About 7,000 kids would come through each year for 3-day retreats in groups of about 50. And I loved that, but 3 years of that was enough. And then I ended up in administration in 1984. I was head of clergy personnel for 5 years, and then from 89 to 08, when I came here, I was Vicar General, Moderator of Victoria. So I ran the diocese for 3 different archbishops.
In 2008, after serving for years as the Vicar General and then as an auxiliary bishop in the Archdiocese of Baltimore, Bishop Malooly was named the next Bishop of Wilmington.
Archbishop Sambi was a nuncio at the time, and he asked me, he said, if you were to be assigned to Wilmington, would you go? And I said, sure, I'll do whatever the church asked me to do. And it was just shortly after that he called. I was coming to a familiar area. This diocese includes 9 Maryland counties also. So it's the state of Delaware, which is 40% of my geography. The 9 counties are 60%. So I include all of the eastern shore of Delaware and Maryland, and our family always vacationed in Ocean City, Maryland. So, I mean, it was like coming back home in many ways, and it was a very familiar transition. And I try to follow my motto, rejoice in the Lord always. One of my priest friends said, why don't you take that phrase that describes you? So when I preach to the kids, I try to keep them upbeat, tell them to stay close to the Lord. Each one of you is blessed by God and by family. Why don't you show that? Smile. Let people see that you're happy. I mean, that's what made the early church go. There were a lot of happy campers, and they just spread the good news, and other people wanted to be part of the package. So I try to encourage young people just to spread the faith. Things that are important to me, and I think will be important to any bishop: vocations, the poor, Catholic schools. I mean, it's our Catholic identity. If you only have 1 in 3 Catholic families in church, you're going to have a hard time having Catholic identity in that house to the degree that we were used to. So the schools take on an excellent education too. Immigration, our Hispanic communities are growing phenomenally. They're going to buttress the church. We have people moving away and they're moving in, and they're going to make the church strong. And then once again, the evangelization, however, what the parishes can do to open the doors and make people feel welcome. Yeah, I wrote a letter to the Pope. I said that I finished my 75th year, that's canon law, and I'm writing to resign the Diocese of Wilmington. My doctor tells me I'm in good health in the top 20% of my age group, and I'm willing to stay on as long as you like. So I got a response back that it would happen, but not until he has a replacement. I don't think I'll have a problem letting go. When you have the cross day in and day out, you don't have a lot of ego. It doesn't equate. But I think the chair, just the connectivity from one generation to another. You start with one Jesus, you have 12 apostles, and then all connected by the chair in their cathedral. The combination of the chair, the coat of arms, and what I've been called to do, an apostle, one of the disciples of Jesus in this generation. You look at the Lord's life, I mean, it wasn't easy at all. And his apostles, after the resurrection and ascension and the coming of the Spirit, I mean, even with all the joy that was part of the early church, they were persecuted, they were martyred. I think the cross is just part of the package. Once that registers and you realize, and you get one day at a time. You know, the key message is that God loved us so much, He sent His Son to suffer, die, and rise to bring us back home, open the gates of heaven, and make us brothers and sisters with the Lord.